Hello, listeners, and welcome back to the 40th episode of the Heresy Accountability Buddies podcast. Our drinks are cold, our takes are hot. I'm Jacob, and this show I'm joined by...
Dan.
Duncan.
Smooth like butter.
And me, Jamie.
And we're glad to have you with us for this show.
We've got your head,
just a few announcements before we get into talking about our Iron Warriors rules. First of which is a congratulations. Even though we are still lamenting the absence of fully formed and functional demons rules, we are thoroughly excited to be able to say that the Militia PDF is out and available for those players. We've already got a first couple people starting to get games in with that. They're very excited by what they're seeing, even if it's much like what Astartes have had to deal with, going to require a little bit of massaging and tweaking. We don't really have the time, though, to get all the way in on that, especially given that our local militia aficionado, John, is not able to join us this week. We're hoping he's going to be on the next show and that we'll be able to dedicate the time to that. Anybody else? Any announcements? I think we've got one other before we keep going too far or too fast. And that is we are, on behalf of a friend of the show, putting out a Dudes Looking for Dudes, Hard for Heresy in Germany. I don't know if we immediately have a region available on this, and so I apologize as an American and equipped with freedom units. I don't really know what commute times would look like, but if you have a heresy play group in the wonderful nation of Germany, we would appreciate you taking the opportunity to reach out to us. We've had a couple people who are asking around or putting out feelers to try to get some games in, and we'd love to play matchmaker if we can. Any other announcements before we keep going with it?
We might want to let them know how to get hold of us if they do have such.
That's right. We do have a new email address we've been talking about for a couple episodes now. I believe is that show@heresypodcast.com?
That is, or they could probably find us through the Facebook group and just message any one of the members there.
Absolutely an option. You can also kick things off, if you're a member of that Facebook community, by going ahead and kind of putting a post out there, letting people know what your community is, where you can be found, what you're about, and doubly so if you have a forthcoming event.
We are always happy to do event shoutouts and group shoutouts.
100%. If you or someone you know, and we've had a few people on talking about it before, whether that's groups out of Texas or otherwise, if you have an event you would like to get shouted out here on the show and you've got some firm details for us, feel free to drop us a line. Again, show@heresypodcast.com. DM one of us through our various social channels, or otherwise even just post your event details on Facebook. We will try to collect those from the group and make sure that those make it into regular show announcements.
Dudes Looking for Dudes, Hard for Heresy.
Hard for Heresy.
We will also take this time, probably by the time this episode is out, we will be celebrating our first anniversary. We're still ironing out some of the finer points, what that birthday celebration is going to look like. But listeners, we are so thankful and so appreciative that all of you have been here to help get us to where we are. Thank you. As we kind of clear out of our announcements there, who wants to get us started off with our regularly scheduled hobby progress?
I made Duncan read. That's my hobby progress.
The militarist?
No. He made me read a paint rubric for events.
Because I'm a jerk.
Are you writing a rubric, or is he interpreting someone else's rubric for you?
It's a brand new, all done up special just for Heresy.
Ooh.
Yes. Along
Intriguing.
with...
I'd be interested in reading that.
Along with some breakdown for points and some other stuff for, things and stuff and possibilities.
Yeah.
With maybe three missions already.
2 hickeys and thing flams.
Yes. So that's been my hobby progress for this week. That, and apparently I'm putting together a Pez heart candy dispenser here in a minute because it's broken on my hobby table and the children just come in and anything broken, sit it on my hobby table, and then magically
expect you to fix it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That sounds like my wife.
Yeah. So, Dan, what have you done?
Well, so amazingly enough, your hobby progress is more than I have done. I have literally not touched a knife or a paintbrush or anything since the last time we recorded Adepticon. Been working on getting ready for my backpacking trip to Philmont this summer with the Scouts. Trying to lose weight for that. And just life in general have kept me from the painting table. So this is the first time I have sat down at the hobby table in all that time. It's a little sad, but I have definitely been busy. But I do have on the table next to me to start painting on again my first tactical unit of Blood Angels I want to finish up next. So I am planning on getting back to it. I don't know how much time I will have in the next few months until basically after July. But I do have some stuff on here and I'm going to be working on tonight to start. So I did read the Iron Warriors rules for the first time for tonight. And yeah, that's about, and I read the militia stuff when it came out. And that's about the extent of what I have done for the hobby.
Duncan, we didn't end up catching your hobby progress, and we'll end up circling back to mine now that I've put my 2 cents in on a discussion I unfortunately missed last show.
So I'm actually gonna kind of tag off of that discussion. I love the World Leaders. I've always loved the World Leaders. I've loved them since 2nd edition. Other than the Iron Warriors era, they have always been my favorite, or my second favorite Chaos Legion, or Traitor Legion, I should say. Back in 2nd edition, they were just Chaos Marines, but they were always my second favorite. I have strayed from the Iron Warriors, and I have been, as we all know, playing Sons of Horus for a bit. I've got a fairly respectable list. I've got a nice selection of dudes who are fun to play and who I think look really nice on the tabletop. But as we know, I painted up Delvaris this month. I started at the beginning of the month working on him for the RF5 painting contest, and I'm incredibly proud of how he turned out. So I decided, well, I've always had my World Leaders list based on the Battle of Armatura. So I decided just to go through that novel again. I reread that novel, and I started building Kargos, Kargos, the apothecary who's attached to Karn's command squad. But in the current rules, you can't attach an apothecary to a command squad, so I've kind of built him up out of a different body just to make him basically a Primus Medicae, and done him up. He's done. I'm kind of happy with how he turned out as well. And I've got started on Skane for the Destroyer Squad for that list, because if you're going to have characters and stuff from the book, you may as well actually have the things that are featured heavily in the book, the way I figure it. So I'm going to make a Destroyer Squad for the World Leaders, and I've got the base colors down on him. And while sitting here today, I was like, I don't really feel like painting anything today because I spent a lot of time yesterday painting and getting Kargos done. So tonight, this afternoon, evening, whatever it is, I was rummaging through my stuff, my pile of shame, and I was like, what do I feel like putting together today? What do I feel like working on soon? And I came across this tank that I've had for a bit that I haven't worked on, that I've always planned to do for the World Leaders. And it's a Fellblade, because of course it is. So I'm sitting here and I'm shaving off gating, cutting gating, beginning the assembly of the hull. So far I've got the bottom plate together, and I've got the left side plate, and I've got the very bottommost front plate together. I've got the front top shaved up. I've got the right side plate shaved up. And if this were a visual cast, you could all see the giant pile of resin and plastic in front of me while I sit here and fiddle around and figure out what the next part is, without any instructions, because of course I have forgotten where I left my instructions at. And somewhere I have a PDF of it, but I can't remember where I've saved that to my hard drive.
I've got them. Let me know. Talk to me after the show, and I can get them to you.
I will do that more than likely. Other than that, some craziness bit my head, so I decided to just build this entire army with putting in as much maximum effort for all the guys as I possibly can, other than Angron, because I already have Angron painted, and probably other than Karn, because I already have Karn painted as well. I may have to go back and redo Karn, but I don't know if I'll have to go back and redo Angron compared to the level of painting that I've put into Delvaris and Kargos. So we'll see.
Careful, if you redo Angron, you'll have more in common with the Emperor than you ever thought possible.
Ooh, yeah, that's actually probably true. But like I said, right now, my next project that I really want to kind of work on, other than dealing with Skane, is this Fellblade. So during tonight's cast, I'll be sitting here assembling a Fellblade in the spare few moments when I'm not talking about Iron Warriors. But for tonight, since we're doing a whole bunch of stuff on Iron Warriors, I've got a list ready. I've got a whole bunch of stuff done up. And we'll talk about that in a bit. Jamie, have you talked about your hobby progress yet?
I have not.
I think, sir, my friend, that we should put it right over to you.
So, I was a busy beaver. Not as much as our fellow co-host John normally is, but I actually got a lot done this week. I just said no sleep till Brooklyn, and pretty much just hammered out stuff. So, amazingly enough, I have gotten to the point where I'm literally like nitpicking stuff on my inner circle guys. They're all 10 finished. And I just keep going back and looking and finding stuff that I don't like. So I'm to the point where I just like, I need to stop on them. But I also started on some more rhinos because, the 11 I have for my Dark Angels aren't enough. And I also started on another Land Raider Proteus. Then I found right now, which is apparently one of the holy grails of the hobby, a store in town that's carrying jet bikes, plastic jet bikes.
Ooh.
They had 6 boxes. I was actually a nice person and only bought one of them. They also had Typhons. Like, they had 7 Typhons in box, which one of my friends that at work that plays Heresy, he bought one of those for himself. And then they also had like all the Lion stuff for the for 40K. We had a friend in Florida that we got all that, and all like the 2 new books that came out for him and all that. What else? I have a stack of boxes that are shipping out to people with hobby related goods in them, namely Thunderhammers for Duncan.
Yay.
And posters and stuff that are going to John for people in Texas. And then I cleaned up a lot of my hobby room. It's not all the way done, but I've been working my way across, even though it's like horrible still directly behind me, but like off that way, it's actually really clean. And I apparently have found that I drunk ordered a bunch of hobby stuff like that I never knew I got. So I literally found like 2 or 3 boxes of miniatures and vehicles. And apparently, I do not need any despoilers or mark, 2 assault marines ever again in my entire life, because I think I ordered them the same order 3 separate times. So, yeah, I've got a lot of those to use for other things.
See, I could have just taken one look at the rules for assault marines and said, you have all you need for your life.
Ooh, well, yeah, for the tradition.
Thanks. But yeah, like I've got actually a decent amount of painting done this week, and I was painting before I came on to record tonight, and I've got stuff already lined up to paint like a couple other nights where I just don't sleep this week. So yeah, things are going good, I guess. And oh yeah, I also got more Toys for Tots stuff in, so I've been going through kind of organizing and categorizing that stuff as well. So
awesome.
This is my friendly reminder to both you and Ned of the Ineptus Astartes that has he sent you a White Scars list yet?
No, he has not.
No, he has not.
But I have stuff to add for that. I mean, Dan sent us some nice stuff for White Scars that'll be very helpful. Fast, speedy stuff. Word bearers. At this point, I'm just really only need like transports or like big tanks because like
define transports.
Rhinos, land raiders, that type stuff.
I may have a couple spare rhinos laying around the house.
Rhinos will probably be needed for the White Scars, though, as well. And I know John is sending a couple for that. But yeah, word bearers literally don't need any troops or big gangly elites or HQs or anything named because I have it all now. They're very well stocked. And I actually have somebody that said that they would actually paint the entire army again. So,
hey, there we go.
Yeah. So we're making progress. Jacob, how about you?
Super exciting. Yeah, I've been continuing pushing forward on some BattleTech gameplay projects. There've been a couple people who to give a little context here. My first game of BattleTech since the plastics ended up on the shelf, I showed up having done what I thought was a good job by Heresy standards. I was like, I got my army fully painted, it's based, I followed all the rules for force organization, I've got all these mechs from the right time period, and really like tried to have a fully functioning army in more ways than just put the models on the table and roll the dice. I showed up to this game and everybody kind of looked at me like I had three heads going, yeah, none of us use the force construction rules. We just put the robots on the table and play. But
so like they were running like Dark Age stuff with your like early. No.
The way Alpha Strike is, they've done a lot of work on the points totals to make it so that you could play like Succession War mechs against Clan Invasion era stuff against Dark Age if you chose.
Okay.
And that's super cool, but it was still the case where like sometimes they weren't even following like faction availability. They were like, oh, I've got these two Davian mechs from Star League, I've got these two Steiner mechs from Dark Age, and then I've got these two mercenary mechs from Clan Invasion, and I'm like, cool, that's really what I wanted to see. But
what you're telling us is you tried the 30K BattleTech.
Yeah. But the cool part has been that, especially over the last 6 to 12 months, there's been a huge uptick in people who are like, hold on, so there's actually like force construction rules. You can do more stuff with these than just like put them on the table and roll the dice and see what happens. And that's been immensely exciting to me, to get people who...
You have to stick to time periods? What are you talking about?
Right. Again, so the escalation leagues that I was in, the first one I was in was just faction availability. The second one that I was in, which I've unfortunately had to drop out of through combination of some choices they made about some optional rules that I'm not crazy about.
Did they bust out Solaris 7 mods?
Nah, they,
Okay.
So Alpha Strike natively, you calculate your to-hit roll, and then you roll a single pair of d6 to see if your attack hits, and then it's all or nothing for your damage profile on the unit listing. What a number of people in the community, especially in absence of guidance from Catalyst themselves, have taken to is something they call multiple attack rolls. So if your mech's going to deal 5 points of damage, you roll each of those points of damage as if they were a separate weapon system in Classic, and you roll a separate pair of 2d6 for each of those. My dice absolutely will not play that game for me. And I am increasingly of the opinion that there's a reason why that is an optional rule and not the as instructed way to play. But the flip side, though, is that it meant that one particular guy and I busted out 500 points trying to play like true combined arms war game with this, not just lance on lance. So he took 2 Inner Sphere lances with some air support, and I took a clan binary. We played 500 points on a...
Rusted Duncan's look. He didn't like that when you said clan.
What is that smell?
What's what smell? Is it your opinion about the clans?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's his opinion about the clan.
It smells like filthy clanners in here.
I'm sorry. I'm too busy sitting on the throne in Terra to worry about that. It's so funny. I started playing Clan Wolf way back in the day, and now like I won't even look at Space Wolf players. It's very funny. No hint of irony there for me whatsoever.
Sir, I'm just gonna go ahead and say that one day soon you will actually understand the glory of a thing known as the single shot autocannon House Davian.
So that's my next project is getting some of my Federated Sons stuff on the table. They definitely, I had about half the model availability as far as just like raw number of units for them is what I had for my clans. So I've been playing a lot of clans, just for the sake that I had more variety to choose from. But having done this, I'm trying to see if I can put 4 lances of Inner Sphere Max on the table at 500 points, just to see what it's like and how it goes. But we busted out a full 6x4 table. We put destructible buildings on it. We followed every scrap of like terrain rules and how aerospace works and artillery fire, whole shebang. Really, really exciting, and I have not felt as good about a war game since the first time I played Heresy. Super exciting to me.
That's nice. That's nice.
Yeah.
Well, if only you weren't a filthy clanner, it'd be okay.
Yep, as you do. But all of that also goes a long way to mention that here's hoping that as my ordeal for the year comes to the end, we're now 2 weeks away from move-in. I will eventually get to reclaim my hobby room and start getting paint back on models and figure out what's going on with Heresy for me. I
know you were having some issues with some of the stuff in Heresy.
Yeah. I
think I found a solution for you.
Tell me more, salesman.
So, why don't you, before we go any further, tell people what you were trying to create. The list that you were wanting to build and make and have fun with.
So after it was Michigan GT 2019, keep in mind I had always wanted to play Thousand Sons. I got Alpha Legion off the ground because I took one look at the Armella Steinat model, and I was just like, well, I don't know how long it'll take for Thousand Sons to come out, but given that like we're not even getting whispers or rumors of them, I see color shift paints and I see scale mail, and I want to play that. Super exciting. Ended up getting into that. Had several thousand points. They're not really functional in the current edition because that army was built on a hybrid drop pod strategy, and that's also funny to mention because for those of you unaware who maybe have not ever made it to Martinsville, there was a time last edition where we took one game night's worth of dudes. This is not an event we did not put out for like interstate players. This is just every other week we would get together and we would play games in Ryan's basement. And we got just the guys who were together right then and put everybody's drop pods, and we overflowed a 6x4 table. Ryan almost, by the time he left, between his Black Shields, Word Bearers, and Salamanders, and I think his Blood Angels as well, I think those 4 armies, he could almost filled a 6x4, just with his drop pods. We had a very, very pronounced affinity for drop pods. So, Book 7 comes out, Thousand Sons rules are in the state that they're in, and I hadn't really seen anyone put them on a table in a way that I thought was going to be fair and fun for both players until that GT. And it was kind of there that, especially having done the Matt Cain class the year prior, I gathered my gumption and I said, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to do Drop Pod Thousand Sons, because it will be the list that I've been playing forever. One of the very earliest lists we're talking, must have been 2010 or 2011 that I started playing with 40k Space Marines, was drop pods. And Thousand Suns had always, like I said, been that kind of chase project. I was going to take the two things that I loved the most, and even if they weren't great, I was going to mash them together, especially after my... I was originally taking Ahriman. I had built out and heavily converted a pile of Land Raiders. So I was doing Ahriman to give Scout to troop choices, and then I was playing basically a Raider Rush army with him. And I could never get it to work. I am not a Raider Rush player, and I think that the Land Raiders that I built and converted were probably held together as much with my own salty tears as they were anything else. So that kind of got shelved over the last couple years, just as I kind of chipped it together and cobbled it together, but by the time I was more cleanly squaring up to start on it, we got the announcement, hey, New Heresy is coming. Well, okay, I guess I don't need to finish that army project. I'll coast out the rest of the edition on my Alpha Legion, and then we'll see what happens. I've admittedly got a small sample size with my Thousand Suns up to this point, but my last game was against you. That was back in February, and it was bottom of turn 1, and I was tabled, or all but. The army is just not functional for me in the way that I would want it to be. A friend of the show, Nick, in response, offered to take over running events for a while for me, so that I could step back and get some perspective, just because the jump to the new edition in conjunction with some things that were going on in my life, the house falling apart and such, were not conducive to me getting to enjoy Heresy. So we fast forward, he's saying that as soon as I want to come back to Heresy and get a game in and roll some dice, he's got a drop pod Thousand Suns list for me. And he is intelligent enough to not share that with me ahead of time, because he knows that I will pick it apart like a scab that just has to go. But in the meantime, as I've sat and gnawed at it or on it, I have increasingly become of the opinion that I'm trying to swim upstream. Thousand Suns are neither shooty enough nor stabby enough to successfully accomplish an orbital assault army in the current landscape of the game. So I am loosely speculating on, and I'm going to have some test games with it before I really get the airbrush fired up and start getting models back together, of either jumping the drop pods over to a tentatively Death Guard or Word Bearers project, or reconstitute the Thousand Suns into a Guard of the Crimson King list, because Guard of the Crimson King gives native deep strike, and it seems a little more congruent with the current edition to both have a ground-based presence and then to do the thing that I used to do in the game, which was the hybrid drop. It's a little less sure, it's a little less reliable, but it's something that I'm at least chewing on the idea of. And then from there, it would be either part the drop pods out to other community members who are interested in them, or repurpose them into a loyalist army. I've got a loyalist idea for Raven Guard that maybe I'll talk about on the show in the next month or so, just to float the idea of the list out there and have other people talk about it. But otherwise, it would probably be moving the drop pods to Imperial Fists. We don't currently have an Imperial Fists player in the Martinsville area, and given that they are in a favorable position right now, that's something that easily draws my eye for, well, I could just put drop pods with these guys and do the things they're doing. That's not to say that's the direction I will go, as I'm trying to learn to be responsible with my time and with my money, and to know a little bit more of what I'm getting into before I start making purchases and assembling. So
okay.
So there's a very long way through all that. But that is a great opportunity to put out to our listeners. If you have experience playing Thousand Suns or Orbital Assault or Drop Pod Assault, whatever they've called it this edition, either drop me a line directly on Facebook, or don't be afraid to hit us up, show@heresypodcast.com. I'd love to hear what your experience has been and what you have to say about it, both playing as or against those forces.
Sorry, go ahead, Duncan.
One bit I want to say before I start talking about what I had for you is you remember the Siege of Chthoniya book that's coming out sometime in our lifetimes?
Allegedly, yes.
There is a thing in there for Loyalist Thousand Suns during the siege.
I am not immediately opposed to it. If they get a new unit entry or something, it might be something that I'd appreciate talking about. But ultimately, I know that at some level, the big thing that I do want out of Thousand Suns is Ahriman. Even though I'm a little disappointed with the direction his character has taken in 40k, the bits that we got of him during the Heresy and even during some of the Ahriman series of standalone books that were put out in 40k up until those first end times came around with Yvraine and the return of Guilliman. I really liked his character, and so he was something that was going to be probably an include for me.
I can't say I blame you. I don't personally like the mind bullets bit too very much, but speaking as I'm buying an esoterist just to put him in the world leaders army to represent Eska. I've been fiddling and looking at stuff for the Thousand Suns, not just for myself, not just for my daughter, but also for you. So, yeah,
I appreciate it. Go ahead.
I was gonna say Nicholas has played 5 games now with my Word Bearers drop pods list, and he's, I don't know, 2-2-1 or something, or something like that. So he has been fairly successful with that list. Now, I have a feeling that he's been getting Galvor back to the right spots and just letting them run and do their thing. Is half of why he's been successful, though. So I think that it's really a mix of, and he's only got 2 5-man units, so it's not like he's swamping the table with Galvor back. But I think they're good enough that you get them in the right place, and they can really help you turn a battle and be really competitive. So I don't know how much that helps, but I know, he's been fairly successful playing that list. So
Word Bearers definitely stood out to me in the same way the Death Card did, for the capacity to get either true or pseudo tough 5 models on the initial deep strike. Given the prevalence of las cannons and multi-meltas this edition, without that, I really feel like you are just begging to get slapped by Interceptor. And that definitely compromises your ability to get to combat and be capable when you get there. So Death Guard have Death Shrouds with Battle Hardened 1 and 3 wounds. Sure, they're only a 5-up in Molten Save, but they're pretty thick in that regard. And then on the Word Bearer end of things, obviously Galvor back having True Tough 5, even though they don't have a 2-up armor save. By the time you can pick to, put Argoltal with them, give them Feel No Pain and scoring, that unit gets very threatening very quickly. You can also grab things like Lorgar, who I think he's still a chaplain, but he's got the ability to summon demons. So even after you complete your initial placement of drop pods, you can then go summon in demons in the shooting phase, and even if they can get intercepted as well, that's additional first turn assault threats that you can put out there that you haven't had to pay for more 235 point Charybdis for.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure, by the way, that we've all been reading the Charybdis wrong.
How do you mean?
Drop Pod Assault, I don't think it comes in first turn.
I believe the FAQ did make it so that it does so. That's my understanding at this time.
If I'm wrong, and if the FAQ does say that, I have not actually had a chance to look at said FAQ. But if so, then marvelous, and if not, then meh. But I'm no longer sold at all on the Big K.
With how expensive it is, both points wise and cost wise, it needs something to have you get it.
I mean, the gun's pretty spooky on it, but I don't disagree, Jamie, that for the fact you're 235 points, yeah, there should be an upside to it. But that's maybe neither here nor there. We're pretty deep into the weeds on a tangent, and even though I think it's lovely, it might be a little more suited for a standalone show, because the real rules we wanted to talk about were Iron Warriors.
Oh, Jacob, one thing real quick.
Yeah, I got you, man.
My buddy at work, Blake Hayes, he's played in several of the events around the country. He has a pretty decent Raven Guard army, but he's actually started at T-Sun's army right now, and he's he's sending me his list that he has. That usually his lists are pretty competitive.
I think they're a very functional army. It's a question of if they would be functional for me and do the things that I'd want them to do. I know that Guard of the Crimson King will let them do more of what they want to do as far as flexing psychic powers. That being said, the longer I've gnawed on it, there's definitely been at least a little bit of question or debate surrounding if Thousand Suns will ever actually be healthy in Heresy. Just because, like, 40k has clearly moved in a direction where psychic powers are more integrated into that game system. But here in Heresy, you've basically got, like, Space Wolves and White Scars who still have their unique psychers. You have Word Bearers who obviously take a number of psychers. And you've got Thousand Suns. But outside of those, you may see people take a psyker as like a novelty choice, but they very rarely feed into greater army synergy or flavor. Again, outside of people saying, no, I definitely want to play like Salamander's Awakening Fire or something. And that inability to integrate, I think, may always be a pain point, or at least it will be difficult for me to not convince myself it's a pain point as far as just mechanics go.
That's fair.
So we've got Iron Warriors.
Stripes. The best joke ever.
So, for those of you uninitiated, the Iron Warriors have as their Legions Astartes characteristic Rack and Ruin. That gives them +1 strength anytime they go after a Dreadnought, Automata, vehicle, or building. This is, depending on who you ask, a little nebulously defined as to whether it gets added to your weapons before or after selecting a target. I, as an EO, have been on the side that you assign all weapons to what they're targeting, and then this strength bonus would get applied. So this strength bonus still kicks in on defensive weapons, but not all EOs play that way, and it may be worth checking with your EO before upgrading to some of the Strength 6 Volkite sponsons on your tanks as a result.
Well, it specifically says in that rule, shooting attack or melee attack targeting a model, it gains +1 to the strength of that attack. So I would say it always goes after.
I agree, and that's why I say I don't think it breaks defensive weapons, but other TOs may read that differently, and it may be worth floating that in advance. Speaking of advance, they do have their advanced reaction, which is Bitter Fury. You may take the return fire reaction twice, but your weapons gain gets hot. That's a too long didn't read quick and dirty summary of how the reaction works. It follows all the normal rules as far as when you declare it, how you enact it. Hey, hooray, hurrah, there you go. You get to return fire twice, but you have to get hot while doing it. That does have a unique intersection with one of their warlord traits. That warlord trait being Tyrant of Lysatra. Tyrant of Lysatra is
the most commonly seen tyrant now.
It is very, very strong. This warlord trait, even if you think their Legion specific rule was not potent, this warlord trait almost single-handedly gets Iron Warriors players, even though, like, apparently I'm the only person who's ever looked at the Iron Warriors Legion and just been like, yeah, I 100% want to play Perturabo. A lot of players are just like, A, I didn't want to in the first place. B, if you read Tyrant of Lysatra, I super don't want to play him. So Tyrant gives +1 shot with rapid fire assault or heavy weapons which are not blast or template. It does give you gets hot as a consequence, but if you, I don't know, took a unit of multi-meltas, which are twin-linked, it becomes very difficult to overheat that unit. Likewise, did you want to make your las cannon heavy team better? Here, staple this guy to them. In the meantime, it also grants you, I believe, +1... does it give you a bonus reaction? No, it does not. It doesn't seem.
No, but what it does give you is that whenever your warlord who has that trait and his unit is targeted by an enemy shooting attack, it can make the return fire or bitter fury reaction without costing a reaction point from your allotment.
It does, but you must take that. That's the give and take there, is that the first time that unit gets shot, it returns fire, quote unquote, for free without coming out of your pool, but it means that if the other guy has a 35-point Rhino or drop pod to just point its combi bolter at the squad with your warlord attached, your warlord's just going to shout, fire!
It's kind of a careless shot.
He's just bag dumping at the range, man.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you're doing.
So, that's kind of what's going on there. It does mention that you can stack Tyrant of Lysatra with the Bitter Fury, but you will not go double-double. You will go +1/+1. So if you have a las cannon heavy team that takes Tyrant of Lysatra on your warlord, attaches them to that unit, and then takes the Bitter Fury return fire special, you will shoot 3 shots a model, not 4 shots. So,
yep.
Be aware there.
But it also does make your weapons that already have gets hot, it does make them worse. Because instead of just getting hot on a 1, with those weapons you get hot on a 1 or 2.
Yeah, but other than
But who's really bringing plasma right now?
Yeah, plasma definitely got the leg kind of swept out, which we should have seen coming, given how the last 3 years of last edition went. Otherwise,
I thought plasma flamers were hot right now.
But tis.
Oh, sorry, I had to do it.
Then the other 2 warlord traits, you have Tyrant of Apollocron, which gives you fearless. But you must, during both shooting and charge, you must attempt to shoot and charge as possible. That's a high price to pay for fearless when you could instead just take a herald. And Tyrant of Dodecathon, after everybody is deployed, but before scouts and infiltrators, you may nominate 1 piece of terrain and then remove its cover save, and it becomes difficult and dangerous. If the item chosen is a building or fortification, then all rolls on that table gain a +1. Hooray. If you liked how the old Warsmith functioned, Tyrant of Dodecathon is a way to pull that off.
Yep. And it's a pretty good working way. It's not the best. That obviously is Lacetra, but it's flavorful.
It sure is. And sometimes you may decide that you want to pivot into Dodecathon if for no other reason than there's a particularly juicy piece of terrain in the middle of the table, and you would sure like to make that dangerous for the enemy to run through now that dangerous disallows armor saves again.
Yeah.
Special war gear. I think really the only special war gear is the pinning rounds that they can get on bolter and heavy bolter weapons. It does reduce their range. It knocks your bolter from a 24 rapid fire to an 18 rapid fire. And I think it drops the heavy bolter range as well. Does it still drop the heavy bolter to AP 5?
Pretty sure it does, because it makes all of them kind of suck. The shrapnel cannon is... the Gravis shrapnel cannon is AP 6.
Yeah, so it moves your pistol and bolter to AP dash, which, depending on how many militia players you have in your local environment, you can decide the expense of that.
You may have a lot now.
Yep, that's fair. The shrapnel cannon, which is the heavy bolter, that goes to a 24-inch strength 5 AP6 heavy 4 pinning, or the Gravis shrapnel cannon, which if you had a Gravis bolt cannon, that goes there. You do get to keep your 36-inch range, strength 5 AP6 heavy 5 twin-linked pinning. I believe the Gravis shrapnel is actually what the Iron Circle get.
Yep. The Iron Circle get a shrapnel cannon, not a Gravis shrapnel.
Oh, interesting. I thought they would have had the Gravis shrapnel. So, okay.
Nope.
I guess that is Dreadnoughts only. That's a shame.
Well, you can also put it on, I think, in place of anything that has a heavy bolter. So, your nose guns.
Yeah. Yep, and it's a great way to fill out points at the end of a list. If you've got 10 points left over and you've got 3 to 5 Sakaran chassis that have the nose gun, load it up with the pinning rounds just to see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, what's the worst going to happen? You don't make the roll? Oh, well.
Yep. Then you've got their Rights of War. You do have Hammer of Olympia. Hammer of Olympia changed pretty significantly relative to last edition. Last edition, it used to let you double tap and charge, but you lost dual armed if you did so. And it gave you a 4th heavy support choice. Super, super funny that our buddy Alex went a long time of just being like, I don't want to take 3 tactical squads. Why would I ever play this Rite of War? And then by the end of the edition, or the start of the current one, he was just like, no, where did my Rite of War go? Bring it back. I miss it.
I mean, that was my favorite Rite of War for the Iron Warriors.
Yep. Turns out 4 heavy support slots was pretty strong. So, Hammer of Olympia says you replace Fury of the Legion with Fury of Olympia. Your Predators, Vindicators, Land Raiders, including Spartans, gain the old extra armor rule. Actually, no, this is better. This reinforces them. You completely ignore Crew Stunt, Crew Shaken.
Yep.
Does not apply to Sakarans, though. Womp womp. A unit composed entirely of Legions Astartes may reroll failed to hit rolls of 1 for pistols, bolters, cannons, and Gravis cannons. That's pretty strong too. Turns out rerolling your 1s to hit is alright. Fury of Olympia says, so as opposed to Fury of the Legion, where as long as you do not move, you add +1 shot, Fury of Olympia says that as long as you are shooting shrapnel weapons, you get +1 shot. I'm sorry, as long as you are firing shrapnel bolters or shrapnel pistols, you get +1 shot. So it won't kick onto the cannons on the vehicles if you chose those. But again, it lets you move and still get the +1 shot to compensate. Given that you're now rerolling your 1s to hit, this can make your infantry quite punchy. But it does mean that you are going to be paying, I think these shrapnel bolters are 2 points a model. So paying an extra 20% upcharge on your tactical squad, you do pay for it, but I think the benefit is real. The biggest thing that you're going to be looking at or worried about here is that in order to get into range for those, you may have to be talking about some Rhino Rush options, and I know that that's a little less appealing this edition than it was last time. Note, detachments using Fury must still take a Warsmith. We can talk about that console upgrade, and you may not deep strike, subterranean assault, or flank with this Rite of War. The Warsmith, a single Praetor, Cataphractii Praetor, or Tartarus Praetor, may be upgraded to a Warsmith for 20 points. They gain a Cortex controller, a servo arm, and Master of Automata, as well as Battlesmith 3+. May not be given a bike, jet bike, or jump pack if done so. I really like the Warsmith, especially if you are including Perturabo in your army. You can do some really fun, Brethren of Iron style armies, where you bring a lot of Mechanicum to supplement your existing forces. You can bring some Multi-Melta Castellax, and I know that Thalax actually retain the line option if you put them in a Astartes army. So if you ever decide that you are tired of having to invest in more tactical marine choices, and or don't want to invest in the Legion Herald, Iron Warriors definitely sport that as an alternative way to play. Their other Rite of War is Ironfire. That's based on, I think it was a short story where basically didn't everybody just bunker up in Spartans and they just laid down a rolling line of artillery in front of the Spartans as they kind of cruised through?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that short story was written after the rule was already done, because it was pretty much just, or after this Rite of War for first edition was already created, and it was just done as a way of, hey, this is what more nonsense the Iron Warriors do, because the story was shoehorned around the right.
That's a shame.
It wasn't that good of a story.
Yeah. Ironfire has also changed pretty dramatically relative to last edition, as it now lets you take Archetor squadrons as non-compulsory troop choices. It does not give them line, but you can move them out of your heavy and into the troop slot. If you have the money to field that army, our complaints may fall on deaf ears with you, just because clearly you are not concerned with those things that mortals here might be. But before you spend that money, maybe finish finding out about the Rite of War if you haven't yet, and if you're worried about it.
Who needs friends?
Right? Any weapon with the barrage rule may, when targeting within 12 inches of a Legion's Astartes unit, scatters single d6 instead of 2d6. So you do still get to stack that with the Nuncio Vox, and dial that down to single d6, twin-linked, basically.
Yep.
Any unit with the infantry type within 12 inches of the final point of a weapon using a barrage gains stubborn until the start of the next turn. I don't know immediately how particularly valuable that is, but hey, you get it. And any infantry may reroll armor saves against blast weapons. So you get heavy, half of heavy for free. So it doesn't slow you down, but it doesn't help you against flame templates. So there you go. Limitations, once again, no deep strike, no subterranean assault, no flanking assault. And you must include more squadrons of Archeators, Basilisks, or Medusas than it does cavalry. I'm really frustrated by them including the Basilisk and the Medusa in the limitations for this Rite of War, because those units were not available on release day, and those are part of the Legacy PDF, but they're explicitly called out in this document. Really, really leads you to feeling like this was put together, but we're not going to dwell on that. And then this Rite of War, you must take a Siege Breaker, unsurprisingly.
I'm not concerned about the Siege Breaker because if you're not taking one with the Iron Warriors and looking at this right, you're silly.
You're silly.
Well, we all know I'm a little bit crazy. So,
I mean, you say that, but I feel like the Siege Breaker's value is arguably lower than it used to be for Iron Warriors. Between templates in general kind of getting worse, and with las cannons now having Tank Hunter native, the value on the Siege Breaker is way down, even though I agree with you that it is a very narrative-driven choice for the army.
I will say at Adepticon there was a lot of quad mortars and Scorpius. So
I think the Scorpius is quite capable this edition.
Yep.
I do love me some quad mortars.
If we talk about other unique war gear that's available, we do have the Graviton Mace. Super unique piece of war gear, mostly because it's a anti-Dreadnought and Automata cattle prod. For the same price as a power weapon, you can take the Graviton Mace. Strength user, AP3, melee, Haywire. For those of you not familiar, Haywire says, when it comes time to roll to wound versus a Dreadnought, you wound on a 2+, and on a 6... you get an AP2 wound, I think it is, on 2+, and then you get a no invulnerable saves allowed on a hot 6. And against tanks, I think it's the same as it used to be. 2 through 5 is a glance, 6 is a pen. You could alternatively take a Graviton Crusher instead of a Thunderhammer on your characters. Graviton Crusher, Strength +2, AP2, unwieldy two-handed Haywire. I think that that's a relatively poor trade, personally, but who's counting? And then you have the Graviton Maul, which I think is probably the weirdest choice here. So your Dreadnoughts can replace their Gravis Power Fist for a Graviton Maul for 15 points. 15 points. And part of why I stress that is because, like, as a Thousand Sons player, I'm one of, like, 2 legions, technically 3 if you include the Talons of Perdition on the Blood Angels Dreadnought, where it's like, you can pay more points for a worse Dreadnought close combat weapon. Strength +2, AP2, melee, Brutal 2, Haywire. So you lose a point of Brutal, but gain Haywire. That's not a good trade that you should be paying points for. I'll just say it like that and leave it there. Do we want to start at the bottom of the Legion and work our way up, or do we want to start at the top of the Legion and work the way down, gentlemen?
Let's start off with Pappy.
Pappy Perturabo. So I did have the fortune of taking him to Michigan with me and playing him for 5 rounds. I reiterate, I love Papa Peter, and a lot of people don't. Especially Iron Warriors players. So apparently there is something broken in me that I am willing to play this model like a psychopath and just kind of shout, "Here's Johnny," and go slapping. Movement 7, Weapons Ballistics 7, Strength 6, Tough 7, 6 wounds, I5, 6 attacks, lead 10, 2 up save. He is... Yep. That Tough 7 makes him a beefy, beefy boy. He has the Logos, which comes with a Logos array. He has frag grenades. He has a Cortex controller. Remember where I said if you really like Automata and you want to do some weird stuff with them, Perturabo is a great way to play alternative armies in that way. He is the master of his legion. He has Battlesmith on 2+. Even though your printing of the rulebook may say Firing Protocols 2, that's been fact out. Act like that text isn't there so that we don't have to talk about whether and how Battlesmith interacts with Firing Protocols. He's got Master of Automata because of that Cortex controller. He is a trader. And you may, in addition to his 425 upfront points, pay 35 points to bring Desecrated Forgebreaker. We'll talk about Desecrated Forgebreaker, but I am of the opinion you are already spending this many points. Bring Desecrated Forgebreaker. It does bring him up to 460 points, but much like for years, we, or at least Ryan over on RFI, preached, if you have enough points to buy a Spartan, buy Dozer Blades for it. I don't care. I don't care what you think you're doing. I don't care what you think the rest of your list looks like. Dozer Blades are 5 points, and they will keep your model from getting stuck in a bad spot. Forgebreaker is kind of the same thing, in my opinion. Perturabo lets you take morale and pinning tests on shooting attacks on 3d6 drop the high. For those of you who haven't done the math, generally speaking, as long as Night Fight is not in effect, this makes it very, very difficult to break your army. No, this does not make it impossible, just like it was last edition. This has been a pain point for a number of Iron Warrior players I've spoken with. It turns out ignoring core game rules is difficult to balance around. The other cool thing here is it does give you a true additional shooting phase reaction. So, given that Perturabo has, for my money, some of the better shooting among Primarchs, that's pretty cool to see.
Who would have thought a legion built around rednecks that value hunting and guns would be good at shooting?
Yeah, it's kind of a shock to me, too.
It's infeasible. So the Logos gives him a 2-up armor, 3-up embalm, and it includes not quite an augury scanner, not quite a Cognos Signum. I'm really disappointed that Perturabo lost his Cognos Signum, but this is the world we live in now. So he ignores night fighting, which, given that he's a Primarch, he already did. And when he and any unit he's joined Interceptor, the reaction does not come at the cost of your reaction allotment. Hence, it's kind of like an augury scanner.
Yeah.
The Logos Array, as a ranged weapon, 30-inch range, strength 6, AP 3, assault 6, twin-linked, shred, pinning, shell shock 1. And remember, you are a Primarch, you pick where those wounds go. So if they've got Artificer-equipped characters in the unit, you can either funnel all 6 of those rounds, because they should all hit and they should all wound. You can funnel all 6 of those rounds onto their Artificer, or you can just pick off everybody who's not in Artificer armor in the squad and tell the Sergeant, you're still lead, what? Sergeants get up to a lead 8? Okay, that's fine, you're lead 8. We'll knock you down to lead 7. You'll have about a 50-50 of passing this pinning check and sitting there and thinking about what you did. Really strong shooting attack, especially for the range it lets you pull it off at. The melee weapon, which that's had some controversy around it in past years, but it's all fine now at the very least. Strength plus 1, so he's strength 7 in close combat, AP 2. Now, strength 7 in close combat is utterly unspectacular. I talked about, at least at various points, Magnus not having the ability to realistically cope with the Dreadnought. Perturabo, without Desecrated Forgebreaker, goes on as the worst Primarch in hand-to-hand, because he has no Strength 8, he has no Brutal, he cannot instant death another character if he gets sucked into a challenge.
Yep.
That's not to say that this melee weapon profile is without merit. If you have a champion or somebody else who can take a challenge for you, and then you can just use the normal empowered melee to go slapping people around once they don't have any feel no pain, and once they're not multi-wound models, great, awesome, lovely. But you shouldn't bank on that. Especially not when Desecrated Forgebreaker is so good.
If Perturabo is in close combat, for the most part, no offense to players out there who use him as a beat stick, you've made a mistake. That's just my personal opinion on him. He is...
Directions unclear. I am using my Mechanopath to disassemble Dreadnoughts surgically in close combat. and it works.
See, I think he's a lot more useful as a synergistic leader shooting constantly with his guns and that of whatever squad he's attached to.
I don't disagree, but ultimately, when you see 4 dreadnoughts across the table, you've got to find a way through them, and sometimes it's the ugly way through.
No, I mean, in that case, you better hope you have Forgebreaker Desecrated, because otherwise, he's gimped.
Yep. So, Forgebreaker Desecrated, melee weapon, strength 12, AP 1. Melee, unwieldy, so you do lose the benefits of his I5. Mastercrafted, Exoshock 3+, Brutal 2. So for the volume of attacks you're able to make at weapon skill 7, anything that's not a Primarch is probably going to have a really tough time not bouncing off your combination of tough 7 and 3-up invulnerable save, and then you just kind of choke up on the bat and smack somebody and tell them, you didn't want this. You thought you wanted this, you didn't want this. Brutal 2 plus strength 12 is incredibly potent.
Yeah, I mean, you're doubling out box knots?
You double out box knots, you auto-pin basically anything that's not a Land Raider or a Spartan. And even though you won't get brutal on those, you've got Exoshock, so by the time you hit a Land Raider or a Spartan, oh no, I glance on a 2 or on a pin of 3+, I get 2 pins because I've Exoshocked your tank. Just bonkers.
Yep. I mean, it's what it is, and it does what it says on the box. It kills tanks, it opens locks, kills dreads, makes julienne fries, functions as advertised.
Absolutely. So that's what he do. Then we've got our Iron Circle. Iron Circle, I think, are in a better spot this edition, but I don't know if I would immediately call it a good spot. 150 points gets you move 8, weapons 4, ballistics 3, strength tough 7, 5 wounds, I3, 3 attacks, lead 8, 3-up save. Already, you're kind of losing out to Dreadnoughts. You're only 25 points cheaper, and the Dreadnought has 1 point of weapon skill, which is incredibly important for the job that you have to do, 2 points of ballistic skill, a wound, an initiative, and a 2-up armor save. Now, admittedly, 3-up saves are in a relatively fine position, given that I think crack missiles are kind of still the only thing around that reliably gets into them, other than, I guess now, you'll see more people playing Lightning Claws, since they get +2 attacks for dual armed. But, yeah, you got that going on. You are Cybernetica, you are heavy, so you are disallowed from running, but you will get to reroll your saves against blasts and templates. You've got a shrapnel cannon, you've got the graviton maul, you've got a battle shield. You are relentless, Hammer of Wrath 3, and then you've got a couple rules that are built on their shield. So they're kind of hoping that the Graviton Maul is enough to pull you through close combat with enemy dreadnoughts. But given that your weapon's 4 and their weapon's 5, doesn't quite shake out. And doubly so when your gun is a shrapnel cannon, and that Contemptor, if you dial them up to the astonishingly high price of, I think it's $195, you get a Gravis Multi-Melta and a palm-mounted Melta gun, and you behave fully independently, which I don't believe Automata do.
They don't.
Nope.
Yeah. So, again, they're in a better position. That Hammer of Wrath 3 means that it's very difficult for a chaff infantry blob to just tar pit them and then try to crack grenade them to death. But ultimately, considering that your prime competition is now no longer enemy Terminators or vehicles, and it's going to be Dreadnoughts, you're in a rough position. That being said, the Battle Shield does give you a 5-up Emblem, hooray, and it gives you the same Dreadnought resilience against instant death as well as giving you the Breacher Shield if they charge you it's disordered. Hooray. Well, I say Breacher Shield. I don't think they do that anymore. That was last edition.
And if they're base-to-base contact with another one, they go from a 5 to a 4 up on the save.
Yep. And that, technically speaking, is a thing that enemy dreadnoughts will not do. They will not get a 4-up invulnerable save, Sam I am. Shield of the Iron Tyrant says you can choose to bring them as retinue for Perturabo. Unfortunately, this is very difficult to do outside of Apocalypse games, because it means that unless the FAQ says otherwise, they come out of the same points bucket that Perturabo's points will come out of. So, very challenging to get a significant number of them as retinue. That being said, if you do take them as retinue,
3, right?
No.
I thought it was retinue. It had to be 3.
Oh yeah. It does say at least 3. So suddenly you're up to 900 points to take 3 of them plus Perturabo. Yeah. In the words of once again Ryan, if you're up to the point where you can afford the points to do that, there are probably crazier things going on than worrying about balance concerns.
In which case, grab the Tormentor as well.
Yes, please, grab the Tormentor. We'll talk about that here in a second. That's apocryphal now. I'm sorry, it's a legacy unit, not apocryphal. But getting to take them as retinue for Perturabo does move them to Feel No Pain 5+, which I guess getting to stack a 5-up chased with a 5-up was enough for them to say, maybe we don't want to put this in normal games. And then it also gives you a brief rundown of how Cybernetica units behave. After that, we've got the Tyrant Siege Terminators. 300 points gets you 5 models, which all have Power Fists. The Siege Master has an Omniscope, and they all have Tyrant rocket launchers and Combi Bolters. They're in Cataphracti armor, super cool. They do have firing protocols too, so they get to shoot both their pistol, or Terminator class pistol, as well as the rocket launcher on their back, and they are inexorable, which is like stubborn, but only in the shooting phase, so you can still run these guys over in close combat. You can take up to 5 extra Tyrants at 55 points a model. You can buy Chain Fists at 5 points a model. You cannot bring Thunderhammers. And the Siege Master could take a Grenade Harness, but I don't know why you'd waste the points. The real reason why these guys are so expensive, though, starting out at 300 points up front, and then moving to an extra, what's that going to be, 275, so 575 for the whole squad if you brought all 10. Not counting bringing any Chain Fists. I would suggest bringing at least 1, but who's counting? You get one of the more interesting guns in the game. The Tyrant Rocket Launcher. 48-inch range, and it can shoot either frag, crack, or flak. Frag rounds are Strength 4, AP 6, Heavy 4 pinning. I'm so glad these aren't small blasts anymore. They've also got crack missiles, Strength 8, AP 3, Heavy 2, as well as flak missiles, Strength 7, AP 3, Heavy 2 with Skyfire. I don't know why we're putting AP 3 rounds on Skyfire weapons, because I don't think flying monstrous creatures are still in the game.
Yet.
That's fair. Yeah, we may see that change with demons. We haven't currently, but we may. But I don't even think Vulturax got the title in the Mechanicum book. So, it'll be...
Is one of the new demons a flying monsters, or just flying gargantuan?
Isn't Kabanda a flying gargant? But he just gets to move fast now. They did away with the whole, like, monsters can fly either up here with airplanes or down here on the ground with people.
Yeah, he's pretty much just an abomination.
Yeah.
I want to jump. Finish up this, and I want to jump back to the Iron Circle.
Sure.
When we get a chance.
So we do have the Omniscope is the other important thing on these Terminators, something to kind of facilitate them actually functioning. It ignores all the effects of night fighting, so the range limitation, the ballistic skill penalty, the leadership penalty. And when a unit that includes one or more models with it, interceptors, the reaction doesn't come from the reaction allotment. Yada yada, just like Perturabo's logos. That's the end of the core units. Let's circle back to Iron Circle, though. But Tiss?
So I know one of our members here has been trying to put forth that 3,500 points is the new 3,000 points.
That'd be me.
Yep, I've been kind of on that train, too.
I was just doing the maths, and because the FAQ says exactly what you said, that the a retinue squad comes out of the same points allotment as a Primarch if you were to use them that way. That means that it's 880 points if you use Perturabo's special weapon, but it's 845 if you don't. And according to the fancy schmancy little grid, that means that if you do not take his upgraded weapon, if you play a 3,500 point, you can fit Perturabo and 3 Iron Circle in.
Yep.
And get bogged
that
with
is correct.
The conversion of Leviathan.
Yeah.
So fair enough. I'm not saying it's the best strategic choice, but I think that, first of all, the grid goes up to 3,500 points when it gives the examples. But it's just another one of those things that, it's like, this is something that you expect to see in a lot. Before it was you go to 3,000 points because that lets you put all your fancy toys in a line game in, right?
Yep.
It's just another kind of point in my brain that's helping convince me that Duncan's right, that 3,500 point is the new 3,000 in 2.0. And maybe was intended to be that way coming from some of the rules and, their side of things. So just thought that's interesting.
I would like
not
to...
an implausible pitch.
I would like to say this. If you would please record that part so I can then play it for my wife, where it says Duncan is right. I would really like that.
It doesn't count when it's about miniature games, Duncan.
It doesn't matter. It's just I want her to be able to refer back to it.
Hold on. We're trying to have men lead more fulfilling lives here. I'm not going to deny him this pleasure.
Fair enough.
Anyway,
so on that note, my wife, we went to visit Western Illinois yesterday, and with my son, and she of course went to the clearance rack, but she bought her a hoodie sweatshirt. So I looked down today, and she has her Western Illinois hoodie sweatshirt on, and I realized that she owns no swag or memorabilia for the actual school I got my master's at while we were married, and she had to support me, take care of the kid and do all the housework for 3 years. She doesn't own anything and wear it, and yet the day after we visit a school that my son is considering going to and may not even end up going to, she has a sweatshirt on. So that's just to show you how wives support her spouses, right? That's kind of a perfect story for that. So I guess you're right. I'll give you that one.
I can actually make this super topical. Don't enlist in the Iron Warriors Legion if you want leadership to care about you.
Well, that's fair. I mean, I think probably why people.
Wait, hold on.
Don't bring Perturabo. It doesn't have anything to do with the rules. It has to do with these. Sorry, it probably will need to be
just the Iron Warriors Legion
or not.
So
Bobby and Maggie very clearly cared about their enlisted men. Because Gulliman was just like, yes, clearly. Superhuman means superhuman statesman. Robert, I don't think that's what this means. No, of course that's what it means. I'm also very sorry for doing the voice. I can't think of Gulliman as anybody other than Zap Brannigan.
Nope, it fits perfectly. From now on, Gulliman is known as Zach Brannigan. Or Zach Brannigan.
I've been reading about a lot of White Scars, and I think he just figured they were all dead as soon as the war was over. They wouldn't have a purpose whatsoever.
So let's go over
warrior poets.
Let's go over the other stuff that hasn't been touched yet.
Yes, we also have their exemplary battle unit, the Dominator cohort. So keep in mind, the Dominator cohort are the ones who got demoted after failing to adequately protect Perturabo and making him actually work to defend himself. And he was like, that's fine. You guys are out. Iron Circle are in. What could possibly go wrong? Dominator Cohort are pretty stellar. They are an elite's choice. They are 0 to 1. And they come with Cataphractii armor. They start at 225 for 5 models. That's a pretty good price for what you're about to get. Keep in mind, that puts them at 50 points, if I'm right, more than standard Cataphractii. And to show for it, you've already got +1 weapon skill, and you come by default with a Thunder Hammer.
Yep.
Pretty.
If you're an Iron Warriors player, you want these guys in your list.
Yeah, they're pretty alright. They do get relentless. They are stubborn. They're not just inexorable. They are out and out stubborn. They have Hatred Automata. They have a special rule called Those Once Honored we'll get to. They're bulky too, and even though they don't have a character, which sometimes can be a disadvantage, they are chosen warriors, which means each model of the squad can issue and accept challenges.
I'd like to also point out their leadership.
Yep, they are lead 9 standard. They are not lead 7 base, lead 8 on the sergeant. So in addition to the weapons kick, and in addition to getting a Thunder Hammer at their listed cost, baked into their cost, they do get a pretty chunky leadership buff and true stubborn. Pretty appealing. They can take a Land Raider as a dedicated transport if they are 5 models, and they do not, and that's a dedicated transport. So unfortunately, they can't take a Spartan dedicated, but oh no. They can take up to 5 extra Dominators at 40 points a model. So that puts the full 10-man package to 425. For every 5 models in the unit, one can take a Heavy Flamer for 10, an Autocannon for 15, or a Multi-Melta at 25 points. So apparently at some point during the Siege of Terra, Perturabo learned a thing or two from Horus himself as far as how you can outfit your elite Terminators. Any model may choose to exchange their Thunder Hammer for a Chain Fist for free. I would take 1, maybe 2, especially maybe 2 if you went all the way to 10 models, but if you take more than 3, you're throwing away the best weapon in the game. And similarly, you can upgrade their bolters to combi weapons. An Iron Warriors Dominator cohort may be selected as a retinue for Perturabo instead of an elite's choice. Selected as a retinue must have Perturabo treated as the leader model, yada yada. An Iron Warriors Dominator cohort selected as retinue must be deployed, and if they are taken in this way, they lose Hatred Automata, and they gain Feel No Pain 6. So you can give up a rule that might not come into play and get a rule that will almost certainly come into play. The only thing that it costs you is that you are putting Perturabo and his ability to ignore Night Fight with a unit that doesn't immediately have exceptional shooting outside of the potential 2 multi-meltas. And even then you get pretty expensive. So if you took the 460... that is Desecrated Forgebreaker Perturabo, and the 425 that we just said these guys were, that's 885. That is just over the limit for a game, and unfortunately, I will say your mileage may vary for including a single multi-melta in a 9 or a 10-man squad. I know that they are heavy and they can't run, so the opportunity cost is low, but I will at least throw that out there. But yeah, these guys are pretty cool, pretty all right.
Yeah, I really love that unit. I think it's...
Yeah, even if you're not including Perturabo in the army, I think they're a pretty easy include.
Agreed. But don't forget, the Iron Warriors also have several units in the Legacy PDF.
Yeah, you're up there with Raven Guard for having a lot of stuff in the Legacy PDF.
Yeah, well, they didn't put it in the book.
Yep, the first of which is the Tormentor. The Tormentor comes in at 900 points for a Shadow Sword with capacity 24, and an access point on the rear, and a Void Shield, as well as... no, I think that's pretty much just it.
Yeah,
there we go. Enjoy. If you love Shadow Swords and want to put units in a transport that might explode and kill them all, don't let me yuck your yum if you're playing an Apocalypse game.
Don't forget, this time it gets Ballistic Shield 5 as well.
Yes, that's fair.
Yeah, I would never use that.
Next up, we have a unit that has been much maligned, probably deservedly so, the Havocs. Havocs start at 135 for 5, and 5 additional models are at 20 points a pop. They are Movement 7, Weapons 4, Ballistics 5, Standard Marine stat line, again, just the BS5 kick. They are heavy, hooray. Unsurprisingly, they're a heavy support choice. They come native with a shrapnel cannon, as well as the Ferrum Ocularis. They can also be upgraded to take a Vexilla. One dude can take an Augury Scanner. The squad can take autocannons for free. I understand that shrapnel cannons are pretty appealing, but for my money, I think autocannons are better at the free points value. You can take missile launchers at 5 points a model. If you wanted to take a missile launcher, please take Siege Sirens. Or, for the exorbitant yet somehow possibly still too cheap cost, you can take a las cannon at 15 points a model.
And if you're taking these guys, you're probably taking las cannons.
Yep. By the time you're ponying up 235 points for 10 Space Marines, why not pony up the next 150 to get them all las cannons? Yes, it does put them almost up to 400 points. No, I don't think it's too much. You can take Artificer on the Sergeant. You can take a Nuncio Vox. The spicy thing here that you are paying extra for relative to a standard heavy support squad outside of Ballistics 5 is the Ferrum Ocularis. When you use a heavy weapon to make a shooting attack, you gain Precision Shot 6, as long as it is not a reaction or a snapshot. You can have precision firing las cannons. It's a little wild to me that relative to where they were last edition, I think Havocs and Sunkillers flipped places. Now, admittedly, some of that's because Sunkillers Sunkillers were in a position where they needed to do heavy anti-tank duty for the Emperor's Children, because Emperor's Children just didn't really function without that. But Iron Havocs used to degrade cover save on their targets. And now Sunkillers, you are not allowed to take damage mitigation rolls against them. But these guys instead get Precision Shot 6, which is wild. But Havocs go right up there with Sunkillers for reasons why I'm having conversations with people about maybe we should play core only. I don't know if that's the answer, and for those of you who have a strong opinion, I'd love to have you weigh in, either on our Facebook page or in our inbox. We'd love to be able to read those emails out loud and talk about those. But that is at least my gut reaction, having seen the last 12 months unfold the way it has, is that maybe, just maybe, and it's so unfortunate because, like, what do you do for Militia and Demons players? And Dominators are right there kind of on the ragged edge of, are they too strong? But Havocs definitely lead some people to just be like, oh, you took a standard heavy support squad and you gave it more.
Yep.
You also have all of the named... Go ahead.
Don't forget you can run a Master Signals with them.
That is correct. Dial them
Or
up to
a
Ballistic
Marine.
6.
Which gives you that ballistic skill boost.
Ballistic 6 isn't worth that much unless your weapons have Gets Hot, but we probably don't have time to talk about how you could get Gets Hot on a las cannon. To circle back to Duncan's earlier point about, and by earlier I mean last episode, for Iron Warrior's lack of unique and specific models, Havoc's never showed up last edition. Erasmus Golg was kind of the character in the first plastic box that we got. And then we've also got Narek Drager, who was a limited edition convention exclusive, I believe. And Kirvalen. I don't remember if Kirvalen got rules, but we'll find out here shortly.
We do have rules.
But I think it is a bit of a travesty that we have released 2 different standard bearer models for Ultramarines. We are now about to release specific tank commanders for Sons of Horus and Imperial Fists. We put, goodness, what model? Lucius. We put Lucius the Eternal into the Heresy for prequel problem solutions, but Iron Warrior's characters just all got squatted. Extremely frustrating, and I don't even play this Legion outside of times when I'm borrowing it from a friend because I don't have a functional army. Neither here nor there, Erasmus Golg, 175 points for a Cataphracti Praetor stat line. He comes with a Combi Melta. He comes with a Strength 10 Mastercrafted Chain Fist. He's got a Nuncio Vox and an Augury Scanner built onto him. Those are pretty cool. He's got Hammer of Wrath 2. He gets the generic Warlord trait Bloody Handed. And other than that, there's nothing particularly notable about him. Hooray, hurrah, he exists. He used to let you take Terminators as a troop swap, but we've done away with that this edition.
Weapon skill 6 is notable, I think.
That's standard Praetor stat line.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Narek Drager, 135 points. He has the Loyalist rule through and through now. It used to be he started out as a traitor, and depending on when you were playing in the timeline, you could do some, like, Allied or Shattered Legion shenanigans with him and, is it Brearth Eshmantle?
Yes.
Those are kind of gone now-ish. Now he's 135 points. Standard console stat line, except it looks like +1 wound. When rolling to hit for... Oh, he's still got the Cortex designator. Apparently that's a thing that only he does now. When you roll to hit for an automata unit as part of a shooting attack, add +1 if the enemy has already been hit with a model with the Cortex designator. The only unfortunate part there is that he's got a Mastercrafted bolt pistol. So you'll have to get Drager within 12 inches to be able to establish that leading hit. Then he's got the Graviton Gauntlet, so he's got a juiced up Power Fist. Melee unwieldy specialist weapon Haywire. Haywire's a pretty fine rule to put on a Power Fist, so hey, hooray, hurrah. And when you take him as the compulsory HQ choice in an allied detachment, where the primary detachment has a warlord as either Cassian Dracos Reborn. I'm sorry, it's not Brearth. Brearth is the 40k model, but it's the same model.
It's Cassian Dracos.
Yeah. Cassian Dracos Reborn, Xiphus, or Xiphus Jur. The allied detachment that Narek Drager is a part of may include a unit of Legion veterans with the Legions Astartes rule that does not use a Force Org slot and does not count for any minimums required to take. In addition, he gets +1 attack and stubborn when within 12 inches of Cassian Dracos Reborn. It's nice, it's narrative, but it's kind of pointless.
Narek Drager's always been kind of a pointless character, to be honest.
Yeah, he definitely...
He's fun.
He used to be a +1 wound Praevian, and he was our first Praevian we got in the game, because we got him, and we got Audelin Score to introduce the Praevian type, and to introduce the Delegatus type. Yep. And I think Audelin Score's big thing, since all Delegatus got to Mastercraft a weapon for free, his special trick was you got to pick your Warlord trait. It was a big deal when you had to roll for it. And a lot of people loved using that guy in Zone Mortalis, because he also had... I think he had a rule that made him a little more tricky to kill in Zone Mortalis, basically. But neither here nor there. We've got Kirvalen. Kirvalen as his loyalist self. He's always been 195 points, which is pretty chunky. He is a 4-wound Artificer Praetor, which is pretty alright. 4 attacks standing, weapon 6, I5, yada yada. He has a Volkite Charger. He has the Aegis, Artificer Armor, Iron Halo, Frag Crack, Melt-A-Bombs, a Servo Arm, and a Cortex Controller. He is Iron Warriors. He is a Master of the Legion, an independent character. A Master of Automata. I don't remember if he had the Cortex Controller and Master of Automata last edition.
He had Warsmith.
Okay, yeah, still super cool there. Battle Hardened 1, so he counts as tough 5 for the purposes of instant death. That is an extremely potent rule. He has Battlesmith 3+, more of that. He's a Warsmith in all but name only. He gets Feel No Pain 6, which is kind of weird, but certainly nice. Reflective of the fact that he's lost an eye and just kind of gotten beaten mostly to death and didn't die. But he didn't go full Hand of the Sigillite. Battle Logistician. When this Warlord trait is selected, before deployment and before models are placed on the board, the controlling player takes a single unit of any type that begins on the table. While all models that are part of the selected unit are within the controlling player's deployment zone, this unit gains Relentless. In addition, you get a bonus reaction in the Warlord, or in the movement phase. So you can give your heavy weapons team Relentless, which is, for my money, a much more positive play pattern. I don't know if it's actually positive, but it's more positive than what he did last edition, which is +1 armor value to a building.
That was not at all what you took him for.
Oh, that's not what you took him for. You took him because, didn't you give Tank Hunters to his attached unit? Or did he give reroll ones to hit?
Reroll all ones to hit.
Yeah. But that's where I say his play pattern previously of, I'm going to take this Forge World Realm of Battle tile that has 4 buildings on it, and I'm going to make all of those buildings AV-15. That was not particularly positive.
No, but who did that? I mean, I know there were not really a lot of people who played Kirvalen. I was one of them, and I never did that.
That is fair.
Never a single time did I take a Realms of Battle board, or even a, what's that stupid line thing?
Aegis Defense Line.
Never even took that.
Yeah, that
not
didn't
even a
have
bunker?
An armor value, but
bunker?
The bunker that you used to be able to fight your 6 or 8 models out of.
Yep.
It's fine. They're gone now. The dark days are behind us. And then his weird weapon, a broadsword of some variety, strength +2, AP 3, melee, breaching 4+, blind, and mastercrafted. Is it perfect? No, but given that he has a servo arm, I don't know that it needs to be more perfect than that.
I'd also like to point out it does not have specialist weapon.
Correct. So he does get to be 5 attacks, and he can funnel all of those allegedly through the servo arm, which is a bit silly, but neither here nor there. This dude's pretty strong for the fact that he can survive most challenges through a combination of Tough 5 and Feel No Pain 6. And as long as the other guy doesn't catch you with the Hot 6 on a Paragon Blade, you're probably going to come out the other side having just servo-armed him to death.
And best of all, I mean, you have 4 wounds on a Praetor. That's really not common, except on special characters.
Yep. He remained being pretty good, and like I said, as I continue to evaluate and assess the edition and what's possible in it, my value keeps going up on Cortex controllers and the possibility of including Automata, even just as a novelty. Well, that gets us kind of to the end of those. Definitely a lot in there that reinforces the idea of stand, shoot lots of big guns, shoot lots of blast guns, and hope to shoot them before they get to you. Because outside of the Dominators, not a whole lot of super impressive close combat prowess.
Not really, no.
And even then, the Dominators stand out because they are cheap for what they get, and they're capable. and at the very least they are capable in a way that many of their peers are not, especially point for point.
That's fair.
If you heard, hey, Scuttlebutt says the Iron Warriors are going to be in the next campaign book, what would you expect that campaign book would be, and what unit would you like to see for them? So
I would like to see everything from Legacy put into the campaign book and tweaked a little bit here and there. So that, like the work on the Iron Havocs, work on the Tormentor, because does the Tormentor, is it a vehicle? Yes. Do I think the whole entire idea of it is neat? Absolutely.
I wish that we would get Iron Circle finally to the point where they were playable. I think that they are such cool models, and I think that they are such a missed opportunity for flexing the Legion as not just somebody who'd be willing to beef with Imperial Fists, but to look at or talk about or expand the rivalry between them and Iron Hands, at least in like a mechanical fashion. That the fact that Iron Circle have been in the position they've been in for as long as I've played the game is, to me at least, a significant shame.
I can't disagree with you there, but I'm going to say this. We're all looking at it from the standpoint of we typically see a lot of weapon skill 5 guys in close combat.
Sure do.
Remember, a lot of armies and a lot of players don't throw AV or weapon skill 5 on the table everywhere. At Adepticon, I saw a lot of weapon skill 4 everywhere. I was taking advantage of it with my primarily weapon skill 5 entire army. But you don't see weapon skill 5 everywhere. So against regular run-of-the-mill stuff, these guys are going to shine.
And that's totally possible. Maybe they are capable enough that if you're able to get them on the table as a counter-assault unit, and you're able to successfully shoot all the weapon skill 5 threats to them, absolutely. I could be super duper wrong, and they could be awesome.
But it's situational again. It depends on what they have.
So my want is a Dantiak model and rules.
He's dead.
Spoiler! No.
He's dead, and he deserves to stay there.
Yeah, but there's a lot of models that are dead that have rules for models for them. Although I guess they are focusing on Siege of Terra, so it probably would.
Yeah.
I don't like Iron Warriors. I don't want to play them, but I'd like to build or have a Dantiak model because I think he's a character, and I think all the stuff I've read that's had him thus far, which is through Unremembered Empire, basically, I enjoy his character and I like him.
So, if I were going to wish list for something I'll just go something currently in the rules.
Let's. Part of my hope when I asked was something entirely new, something that doesn't exist in Legacies or otherwise, something not just to spit shine but to create.
Okay.
I have an idea, but you go ahead, Duncan.
So unfortunately, I hate the Trident. I hate everything about all the Trident and every member of the Trident. But I would like to see one of two things done. I'd like to see either bring Kroger into the game. I think that'd be kind of neat. He is present on the Siege of Terra, or at the Siege of Terra. He's very, very cornate at that time. He leads. He interacts with Karn. He interacts with the World Eaters. He leads assaults. And when you first meet him in the very first book, Angel Exterminatus, that he's in, he is leading basically an assault group into up an Imperial Fist wall, and then butchering people with bolter and I think it was chain axe. I'm not 100% certain anymore. But I'd really like to see an actual assault element for them, because the Iron Warriors were not known just for guns, although guns are a huge thing they play up to. But they were known as brutal close quarters fighters when the opponent's lines finally broke or their defenses finally broke. And I'd like to see something like that for them. A character who leads them in that, maybe even just a Centurion type that does that, or a special character like Kroger. or a dedicated close combat unit that is purely for them to go up and start punching dudes in the face.
I did think he was an interesting character, and you know, I think, again, I don't care because it's not who I would want to play even with it, but I think Duncan has a good idea and good point in that, you know, it would be an interesting character to have. I mean, you could argue you could do the same thing with just making him a champion or something like that, but yeah, having a full-on, you know, character and some boosted rules where he can take a retinue squad that bumps him to weapon skill 5 and gets some special weapons or something silly, right? You know, just come up with something that, you know, gives him the flavor of him leading his dudes that he's gonna brutally just charge in and fight with. And I haven't gotten to the Terra stuff, but I get that just from you know, the stuff I've read about him, and I think that would be cool.
Like to see that. If I didn't get that and I saw something that wasn't new and I saw a rework of a unit, I'd like to see the Iron Havocs redone. And the only thing I would change on them is taking away their precision shot on a 6. I think doing that and putting them into the main book would actually make them a little more palatable.
And it's just a heavy weapon squad at that point, though, right?
They do get ballistics
native
5,
BS5.
native.
And they have a limited number of weapons.
I almost wonder if you instead made it so that on either, let's do on like hit rolls of 6, cover saves could not be taken. That might be too much, but that would be a way to at least get away from the precision fire while still giving them something more. I don't know if that's the answer, but I'm just fishing for things that could be.
I don't really know if there is an answer, to be honest. I'd like there to be, but I really don't think there is. The other option that I could see would be just more stuff to make them meaner. I don't know. Maybe give them access to an indirect fire weapon.
Do we have parting notes on Iron Warriors before we wrap?
Don't make Perturabo angry, or you're probably going to be smashed against the wall. So.
Or conversely,
that was the lore last week, so never mind.
Yeah, you also have Duncan's point of if you're using Perturabo and you're shooting effectively, maybe don't do what I do and expect to get him into close combat where he's going to make his points back.
Well, I mean, let me just say this. I have built many 3,000 point lists for the Sons of Horus. Sorry, not Sons of Horus, but for the Iron Warriors, trying to find something I want to play. And none of them include Perturabo. Even my 3,500 point lists, no Perturabo. I've built a 4K list. You guessed it, no Perturabo. I just don't see him as a viable add-on to a list that I want to play.
Yeah, and I think that's a reasonable take, even if it's wrong. I've left him speechless. I feel accomplished for the night.
I have Perturabo over there as painted by Sam Lenz for me that I commissioned from him years and years ago, and I love the model. I love the way it looks. I absolutely adore the paint job on it. But you know what? I will never put him on the tabletop unless it's in like Primarch Knife Fight or something.
Now, between you, Mosier, and Alex, I absolutely understand that I'm in the minority, and I see things in Perturabo that understandably others don't. But
I might never take that out of the display case just because it was painted by Sam Lenz, but that's just me.
I'm really happy with it. I'm also going to point out that Iron Warriors this edition, as much as I love vehicles, and I know Alec loves vehicles, as much as I love vehicles in Iron Warriors lists, I've made a couple Iron Warriors lists that don't include a single one. And by that, I mean most of the Iron Warriors lists I have don't include vehicles.
I think some of your really nasty lists from one only had very limited vehicles in them. So
by that you mean 4 Sicarans?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, I thought there was one you had. It only had 2 of them in it.
Yeah, I had one with that, but it also had a Leviathan and a Medusa.
Yeah, I really think they've got a lot of build options between just you can go mechanized warfare, you can go iron fire for the artillery, I really like their Cybernetica options, but again, that may just be I'm weird and I see things
No,
that
because I wanted Battle Excendio for my Dark Angels. Like, I just do. Just because I'm that way.
No, I think they're cool. I've seen some people do some fun conversions with those, and and especially with the way Hammer of Olympia works now, I definitely think there's some real potential there. So, well, gentlemen, thank you for joining us, and listeners, thank you for joining us as well for this, our 40th episode on Iron Warriors Rules. I've been Jacob, and this show I've been joined by...
And
Duncan,
Jack,
and Jamie.
Remember, stay accountable to your hobby and your buddies, and we'll see you here next time.
Thank you.